Oh, and now the battery's gonna die. What a fucking day, y'all. What a fucking day. Okay, hey everybody. Today I'm going to be wrapping up the books that I read in 2019, 2020, and then the first book that I read in 2021. And then we should actually be all caught up on my wrap-ups of books that I read while I've not been posting on my channel. I will not actually be going into what each book is about because it would just take way too long. I'm just going to kind of tell you guys my general thoughts and ratings, if I had ratings for the books, and we're just going to kind of try to go through them as quickly as possible so that this video is not too long. First book that I read in 2019 was Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. This is the conclusion to the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, and a trilogy that I started reading back when I was still in college. I finished Days of Blood and Starlight in 2018, and then I ended up finishing this book first of the year in 2019. 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved this conclusion. I did think that the conclusion was wrapped up a little bit quickly, especially because this is such a long book and the books in the series are so long, especially because the beginning portion of this is kind of still heavy world building, and then kind of there's a lot of new stuff happening in this book, and I feel like I would have preferred to have a little bit more of the ending wrapped up or stretched out a little bit longer, or I honestly would have preferred the book just being a little bit longer, to be honest. I don't mind long books, especially if it's something that I'm really enjoying. So I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I think my favorite of the trilogy is still the second one, Days of Blood and Starlight, but still a very good conclusion in my opinion. Next, in 2019, I read Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is the first book in the Illuminae files. It's told in emails, reports, instant messaging back and forth. There are drawings in here that are compiled for purposes of this log. I think I found one of the, oh, there's a note here, all kinds of really cool ways to tell the story. And these 3 books are basically all of the messages, email, video surveillance footage, all kinds of documents wrapped up into these 3 books that are compiled for this court case that is happening now. This is a sci-fi novel. 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this first book in the trilogy. Spoiler alert, I loved all the books in the trilogy. They are very thick books, which I appreciate because I can actually get through them pretty quickly just due to the fact that it is told in kind of a multimedia kind of way. These have been some of my favorite books that I've read over the last few years, and I cannot believe it took me so long to pick these up. Next, in 2019, I read Every Heart a Doorway and Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. These are the first 2 books in the Wayward Children series. They're very, very small books. That's kind of the theme with this Wayward Children series, but they really pack a really strong punch. I would not call these novellas, even though they are so short. You get a full story in all of these books, and it basically just follows these wayward children who don't really fit in our world. So at some point or another in their lives, they fall through these doors to all kinds of other worlds. There are nonsense worlds. There are, you know, worlds that are made out of bubblegum and candy, worlds of the dead or skeleton worlds, all kinds of really interesting ideas. And at some point or another, after coming to these worlds, these kids fall back through a door back into the real world, and they're unhappy because they don't feel like they belong. So they get sent to this school for wayward children, which is kind of what the first book really describes, as this school for all these children who have come back through their doors into the world and have to readjust to life now, feeling like they don't belong. Then the rest of the subsequent books kind of follow the kids' lives in their world. Very, very fascinating idea for a series, and I highly, highly enjoyed these 2 books. There are currently, I think, 6 books in the series, and I own them all. I've read the first 3. We'll talk about the last one here in a minute. But I just absolutely love these. They're so whimsical, and they just really make you think. I've just really enjoyed these. And the second book follows characters that we meet in the first book. Even though this one takes place before this one, I still recommend you read this one first so that you get an idea about the whole idea of the wayward children and these other worlds. That's just my 2 cents. A lot of other readers recommend that you read it that way as well. I just can't rave about these enough. Let's see, what did I rate them? Oh, here comes Worm. I gave Every Heart a Doorway 4.5 stars, and I gave Down Among the Sticks and Bones 5 stars. So again, really loved these. Cannot wait to dive more into the series and read some of the rest of the books that have come out. Next in 2019 is a book that I was so excited about. I read Rebel by Marie Lu. This is the 10 years later continuation to her Legend trilogy, which I read and absolutely adored. I gave every book in that series 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my all-time favorite series that I've ever read. I actually think I talked about this in my 2018 wrap up, but I read Champion and I rated it I think 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed the conclusion, unpopular opinion, but actually really enjoyed the conclusion, but just felt like it was missing a little something, like I wanted more. And then after knowing that there was a continuation coming out, I changed my rating to 5 stars because knowing that that wasn't actually the true conclusion then kind of obviously I was left wanting more because there's more of a conclusion here. As I was saying, this takes place 10 years after the events of the Legend trilogy. That is just a dystopian novel, very kind of in that whole Hunger Games Divergent-esque theme. There are two different governing bodies, rebels and non-rebels, that are fighting to kind of regain control of the United States. Or is it the United States? I don't even honestly remember. It's hard to compare dystopian worlds to our current world. Rivaling governments, you kind of get the gist. 10 years later. And you guys, I listened to this in one fell swoop during a road trip to see one of my boyfriend's races. And I loved every second of it. I just felt myself smiling the whole time. Everything I wanted to be wrapped up was wrapped up. Everything I wanted at the end, it was here. And it's just so interesting because I feel like I really grew up with those characters, because now, 10 years later, I am the age that they are in this book, and I just really feel like we all grew up together. And it's just so interesting to watch how the two main characters think now as adults and how they have conversations as adults. It's just so different because some of the communication issues that you have as teenagers just didn't happen in this book. So it was just so fascinating to watch how they've grown and to feel like I've grown with it. It was just so good. 5 out of 5 stars, if you couldn't already tell. I loved this conclusion. It just brought me so much joy and I loved every second of it. I have not one negative thing to say about this book. Okay, last in 2019, I read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I just filmed my April wrap-up, and I tried to describe Siege and Storm, which is the second book in this trilogy, and it just was a hot-ass mess. I will link all the books I talk about in the description below on Goodreads so that you can read more about them if you want. I feel like everybody and their mother knows about the Grisha trilogy. This is not a new book. This has been around for years and years and years. Netflix just came out with the Shadow and Bone TV show, so I won't try to go too much into what this is about. I listened to this on audio. I do really enjoy the audiobooks for this series, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I'm wondering, because I've gotten just a little bit stricter about, not even necessarily stricter, I've just kind of stopped thinking that rating books 3 stars is a bad thing. I've always thought if I really enjoyed a book and I don't rate it 4 or 5 stars, that means I didn't like it. But 3 stars is supposed to be a solid average book, and then 3.5 is supposed to be slightly above that. So I do give a lot of books 3.5 stars, and I am wondering if I maybe rated this too highly at the time, but if I went back and re-rated all the books that I've read based on how I think I might feel about them now when I read them years ago, it would literally drive me insane. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. That was my immediate thought, so we're going with it. After listening to Rebel on a road trip being so successful for me, I wanted to try another audiobook. So I listened to this. I really enjoyed it. So, I mean, I don't really think there's a whole lot more to say about this. I am excited to finish the series. I think I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more had I read it in high school or college when this book was really popular. But I still enjoyed it, just not as much as I probably would have had I been a little bit younger when I started. So, okay, so then getting into 2020, I only read 2 books in 2020, and the first of those being Gemina by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, second book in the Illuminae Files, 5 out of 5 stars. I actually think I might have liked this one better than the first one. It's hard to say because I read them in 2 different years, but still really enjoyed both. Like I said, 5 out of 5 stars, but I think I prefer this one to the first one. Follows a different cast of characters, but not really. The characters from the first book are still in this book, but not as prominent. Just really enjoyed this book, and I can't say enough good things about the series, but I already kind of raved about it at the beginning, so I will spare you having to hear it twice in this one video. Okay, and then second in 2020, I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I don't rate these books for kind of many reasons, but the biggest reason being that I find it difficult to rate Harry Potter, because I will say I am definitely not one of those people who is like, Harry Potter is #1 over anything I've ever read. I enjoyed Harry Potter when I was reading it as a kid. I read the first 3 books when they were coming out, when the movies were coming out, when I was the age of the kids in the book and kind of grew up with them. I stopped reading them after the 3rd because they kind of got out of middle grade and into young adult, and they were just too long and it was just too hard for me to stay interested in them while I was reading them, but really loved the movies. I mean, really grew up with Harry Potter. Absolutely love the movies, love the books, love Harry Potter in general, but I'm definitely not one of those die-hard fans that thinks it's the best thing that I've ever read. So, you know, when I was a kid reading them, they probably would have been 5 stars, top favorite books I've ever read. But now that I'm 28 years old and I've read a lot of other things and seen a lot of other movies, there are just so many other things that I love if I had to kind of tier rank everything. So I find it hard to rate these books because as a kid they were absolutely some of my favorites, but as an adult, you know, I really enjoy them, but I wouldn't say that they're the top, you know, and that's kind of all I'll say about that. Okay, and then the last book that I have to talk about here is the first book that I read in 2021, which is Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire. I actually started this in 2020 and then fell back into a reading slump and never finished it. I gave this book 4 stars. It was my least favorite of the 3 that I've read so far, but I still really, really enjoyed it. It's about one of the nonsense worlds and some of the characters that you meet from the first book, and also some new characters. I thought the story was really great. I really enjoyed the book, and again, I've kind of already raved about the series in general, so I won't make you listen to that twice. Okay, my battery died, like I knew it would. I was really hoping I would get to the end without having to charge my battery, but I didn't, and I unfortunately don't remember what I was saying about Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire, but I think I already said 4 out of 5 stars. That's why you're getting like this, like, I'm not set up. I just put my battery back in so that I can film this and then go get myself some groceries for dinner. Highly recommend the series, blah blah, that whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm all wrapped up now, all caught up, and hopefully we can stay on track with doing monthly wrap-ups and TBRs. Let me know what kind of other videos you guys would like to see from me. I can't really do reading vlogs. I've been wanting to, and I've tried, but I can really only film on my phone, and because I do have 2 roommates and our schedules are all kind of sporadic. One of them is home fairly frequently because she goes to school. So, jeez Louise, buddy. So it's kind of hard for me to set up a camera and like do reading vlogs because I do have roommates. Just let me know what you guys would like to see in the comments below. Video types, I mean anything, I guess. But with that, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you all again soon. Bye everyone.
What's that on that beat? Oh, baby, I'm wasted.